Right, welcome to the third ordinary meeting. Yes, probably that. Third ordinary meeting of the Literary and Scientific Society of Tonight, we'll start with business first. So, the deadline for first year rep is tonight. We have received 3 nominations by my count of Rob's. You can still nominate yourself tonight. Say, I'm interested. If anyone wants to do that now, or in the course of wants to come up to me or Rob in the course of the evening, by all means. The interviews for that position will be on Monday the 13th, which is next Monday at 5 o'clock. Room to be seen, but we'll put that up on the event page. The deadline for nominations for the external convener position, the election for which will be next Thursday, the deadline for that is next Monday, the same date as the interviews, so the 13th of October. And with that, we'll go straight on to private members' business. So this is part of the night where anyone can put forward a sort of brief motion, an issue they'd like to see debated. They can bat it around the room, see what other people's opinions are, tear said opinions apart or not. So if anyone has any private members' business they'd like to raise with me? Anything at all? There's quite a lot going on. Mr. Finley?
There is quite a lot going on. I have this sort of used through in my head. I'd like to move that the House congratulates Mr. President on lasting a little bit longer than Diane James.
I must confess, I don't even know who Diane James is. Because only like to clarify for me who Diane James is. Oh right, yes. I should really know that.
Yeah.
That's bad.
I'd like to propose an amendment that this House doesn't know who Diane James is.
Seconded. Any other?
To go to your vote now. Seconded.
Anyone want to vote on the motion? This House does not know who Diane James is. So we can gauge who knows Diane James.
Yeah. Raise your hand if coming into the room tonight you knew who Diane James was.
Oh, division.
We're good.
I'm going to be honest, I really can't be bothered with counting, so let's go for like a sound, like ayes versus nays.
Okay.
So anyone who knew who she was, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone who doesn't know who she is, who didn't know who she was, say nay. I don't know why I carried it on, because I just realised that I just continue to paint myself in a worse light. Moving swiftly onwards, does anybody else have any private members' business? Yes, Mr. Tech Officer.
I would like to ask the House whether they view a citizen of the world truly as a citizen of nowhere.
Would anyone like to answer that? Respond to it?
Yeah.
Theresa May's belligerent words this week. Yes, sir.
Oh no, my answer is yes.
Oh, your answer is yes? Oh, you're going to tear into Theresa May there?
I would mount a pathetic and devil's advocate defence of Chairman May. Chairperson May, I should say. In her slightly ill-chosen words. What she said was, if you're a citizen of the world, you're a citizen of nowhere. You don't know what citizenship means. And citizenship means the privileges that are accorded to you by being a citizen of a particular polity. If you claim to be a citizen of everywhere, that invalidates the concept of citizenship, because there's no distinction between citizens and non-citizens. If every person is a citizen, there is no citizenship. Maybe that's what you advocate. Maybe it's not. But that is the choice you're being faced with.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freer, for that logical clarification. We shall notify Mrs. May by carrier pigeon as fast as we'll allow. Any other private members' business before we move on to President's questions? No? In that case, one more. No, yes, you. What do you want?
Can I pass a motion that we wish Stephen Wolfe a full and complete recovery from his injuries?
Can we just check he's not dead? Yes.
A full and complete funeral.
Depending on the outcome of said Googling,
Oh, he's alive.
It's fine.
it's fine.
Yeah, still breathing. Yeah.
All of the, that's just harsh. I mean, it's
It was by his own friend.
yes. So, any particular wording you'd like to propose for
This
speedy
house,
recovery? Is that the?
this house would send a full bouquet of flowers to the bedside of Stephen Wolfe.
Would anyone like to second that motion, and we'll go to a vote on?
If we make Mexico pay for it.
Would anyone like to second that amendment?
I would like to make a change to the motion.
Interesting. A curveball of sorts, but go on ahead.
A full bouquet of white lilies.
Is that like a mafia thing? Or?
No.
Just a deck card.
All in favour of sending white lilies to the bedside of you, Kit?
Do we have to do it? Do we have enough money for this?
Do we know what hospital
A theoretical bouquet.
I wonder if you're using his European health insurance card. That's the question.
Right, either we vote. Well, I don't even care about the motion anymore. President's questions. Does anyone have any questions for me? I am a font of knowledge. I will answer any question that you have. Yes?
Can I crack into whatever's on the table?
By all means.
I don't know what it is.
Do the honours.
But
It's port.
Change of plans.
I should say that this is fine port. Miss Sophie Scrapful broke our golden rule of no gratuitous swearing at a debate about 6 months ago, and kindly brought us the fine in the form of a bottle of port fortnight ago. So please make merry on her despair. And yes, on her point. So yes, any questions for me other than that? Anyone at all?
Stop. That's
a lot
massive
more.
for a board. This is going to be a good
Could have
speech.
shot like some more.
That's a good question. Yes, Mr. Spratt.
Well, I would like then to raise the certain point of controversy that has emerged surrounding said fines, whether those fines are meant to be continued to exist, whether we did indeed pass a motion removing the necessity for those.
Well, to clarify, we haven't actually. There was some controversy about a fortnight ago. Somebody swore in the debate and then challenged us on the rule, having said that we passed a formal motion that we would no longer be fining people for port. At no point in the minutes can we find any record of said vote, which leads Mr. Whitehurst and I to believe that it was debated in private members' business and was therefore purely conjecture, thankfully, which means our supply of port will continue on anymore, thankfully. The rule as is right now, just to provide some clarification, is swearing is not entirely off the cards. It is, you may swear if it is to emphasise a particular point, but if you are swearing gratuitously in the course of a speech to the extent that you are what I would consider to be lowering the standards of the House in doing so, of ill repute and debauchery, which we definitely are not, then I will consider you to be fined a bottle of port. It's entirely discretionary, but that's basically because I want port. So, yes, moving on. Any other questions for me before we move on to minutes of last week's debate? Yes, Mr. Newman.
Just a question about change to the rules. Isn't it true that no sort of rule that's voted in the House can undo a constitutional rule, which I think the full language being parliamentary debating style would be a constitutional rule of the House?
Well, that's the point, that we never actually had.
You can't.
We never had. You can propose an amendment to the Constitution, but we never actually had that formal proposition. Therefore, therefore, the said member is wrong.
I think the port is a standing order, and you can suspend the standing order for the duration of that meeting, but you can't bind the society to that suspension.
Yeah, it requires formal constitutional amending.
Yeah.
Yes. In conclusion, Craig Miller is wrong, which I never thought to say. So, moving on from President's questions, I'm really disappointed nobody asked me what I had for breakfast this morning, because I actually had a full and wholesome breakfast today, just for you guys.
Did Mr. President prefix his breakfast by attending a champagne reception this week?
I don't like what you're implying there. No, but just for anyone who wants to know, I had bacon and eggs for breakfast. So yeah, I've been eating quite unhealthily for the past like fortnight, having like chicken sandwiches at like 4:30 in the afternoon, which doesn't technically count as breakfast. So I thought I would, make Price proud of me by having a full wholesome breakfast. Our internal convener tried to force feed me avocado, but I avocado Yes, so moving on to the minutes of the last debate, which was, I believe, this House would disaffiliate from NES-USI. Reading them is our Secretary, Mr. Rob Whitehurst.
Good evening, one and all. The second ordinary meeting of the 168th session of the Literary and Scientific Society at Queen's University, Belfast took place on the 29th of September and was attended by 42 members. Private members' business was heard from John McLean, who asked the House about Labour's unclear position on Trident, perhaps somewhat indicative of the current support for the Labour Party. No one in the House wished to comment. Technology Officer Chris Spratt asked the House if debates should be fact-checked in light of recent presidential debates between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Harry Adair responded by saying that it could well mean placing a dangerous importance on the moderator of the debate, pointing to an example in the 2012 presidential debate. The chair attempted to fact-check Mitt Romney on the spot and gave out misguided information. President Emeritus Tara Poyahia then concluded that a fact-checker wouldn't be necessary in the Literific, as by definition the Council is already impartial and couldn't be seen to mediating either side. The President's questions were heard from Jessica Elder, who asked Mr. Murphy where he got his tie for the evening. He remarked that he got it from a website called Mrs. Bow Tie, in an answer that surprised no one. And also from Harry Adair, who asked the President what he had for breakfast this morning. Mr. Murphy responded that he had a Chipco, in an answer that surprised no one. The President then announced the motion for the evening, which was that this House would disaffiliate from NUS-USI. Get used to hearing that acronym. Opening for the proposition was DUP Councillor for Castlereagh South, Nathan Anderson. Mr. Anderson began by stating that he supported NUS-USI student movements in both Northern Ireland and the UK, but said that as soon as QUB secures adequate funding, we should seek to disaffiliate from NUS-USI as soon as possible. He acknowledged that NUS had made valuable contributions to student life. However, the President of the Union is vital. When they're good, and when they're bad, they are bad. He said that a bad president reflects the student body poorly in both Parliament and Stormont, making it difficult for real change to take place through lobbying. He asserted that we should appoint more sabbatical officers rather than relying on a union with no democratic accountability and low student turnouts. He concluded by saying that NUS-USI in its current form is unreformable and it was time to make the break before it gets worse. Opening for the opposition was maiden speaker Mr. Conor Daly, who opened by saying that the proposition argument was giving him Brexit deja vu with their what-ifs and scaremongering. He listed everyone's favourite buzzwords: synergy, a collaboration, political clout and cohesion. Without NUS-USI, we would have none of these vague and crucial things. He claimed that outside the union, SUs would be left to put out their fires alone, leaving individual students potentially left behind by the lack of support. Mr. Daly reminded the House that during the Troubles, that NUS was the one consistent voice for students in Northern Ireland. An ever-present voice in debates concerning tuition fees, EMA, zero-hours contracts, the gay blood ban, and bringing Northern Ireland in line with the rest of the UK in recognition of same-sex marriage. Close with the proposition was Mr. Harry Adair, who asserted that the opposition put on a great front, but in reality the student movement under NUS-USI was failing, and we are desperately in need of an alternative. He claimed that the union policies suppress freedom of speech and the ability to negotiate. Initiatives such as safe spacing and no platforming were in opposition to the free exchange of ideas, so much so that Prime Minister Theresa May recently came out against them. He asserted that this was the first step to an Orwellian nightmare where students were forced to censor their own opinion and thoughts at the risk of having the wrong thought. He concluded by saying that the student body was losing interest in NUS as turnout was frequently below 20%, a sign that the union isn't discussing what students consider to be relevant issues. Concluding for the opposition, so the debate was main speaker and VP Education Mr. Oisin Hassan. He claimed that the debate thus far had been abound with sweeping statements and confusion as to exactly what NUS-USI was. He began by stating that NUS-USI was ahead of the Good Friday Agreement by 20 years, and that while there may be problems, they still held a crucial role in student society. He opened by stating that membership of the union costs QUB-SU £52,000 per year, but claimed that this money goes towards bringing in hundreds of full-time staff and having a president based in Belfast who can be consulted and reported to on any related issues. He concluded by saying that if he had his way, then there would be more sabbatical officers who would have more time to lobby on a national level in Stormont, while saying that the only way this will come about is by remaining part of NUS-USI and reforming. Questions were heard from Robert Clark, Conor Ardell, John McLean, Rachel Ireland, whose question from Nathan Anderson was so spicy it gave him cause to remove his jacket, Peter Beck and Ryan Neal. A vote based on personal opinion of the House was taken, which read 7 ayes, 14 nays, and 20 abstentions. Meanwhile, a casting vote based on Speaker's performance on the motion, this House would disaffiliate from NUS-USI, was taken, which read 2 ayes, 22 nays, and 11 abstentions. May I take the minutes as read?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Writers. And now on to the evening. This House would declassify transgenderism as psychological disorder. Now, I realise that this debate, the motion is quite contentious, and I just wanted to say a few words beforehand, just to sort of disarm some of the fractiousness that might be caused tonight. This is not a debate about getting up in people's faces about identity or anything of the sort. It's not about saying that one thing or the other about the nature of identity and psychological disorder. It's really about the term psychological disorder itself, that classification, and the utility that holds for transgender people, and what the connotations are of that classification. It is purely a debate on the utility, and I do hope that our speakers understand that this chamber is all about respect for the person sitting opposite you. So I do hope that nobody came here tonight thinking that this would be a very fractious, very in-your-face debate. That's not the sort of debate we encourage. We encourage a culture of inclusiveness and diversity. And yeah, so saying that, I will move on to the rules just so everyone's just sort of clear as to what how our speeches run. All of our speakers tonight have 7 minutes to speak. The first minute of their speech is protected time, which means that the opposing side can't field any points of information to then point out something in their debate that they have issue with. They can't ask questions of them either. The next 5 minutes of your speech after that are completely open to the floor. Members of the audience, the opposing team, can stand up and say on that point and challenge you to clarify your point and challenge you on whatever point you made. You can choose to take the point and address it then and there. If they're speaking too long, I'll tell them to sort of sum up their point. You don't have to take the point, but if you don't take the point, just say no thank you sir. You can defer from it for a moment, finish the point you're making, and then take it slightly later so it doesn't interrupt the flow of your speech. I'll ring the bell again at the 6th minute just to show that the protected time is now in place again. And for the last minute of your speech, you can speak completely unabated. I'll ring the bell again at the 7th minute just to tell you to wrap up, and then at 7 minutes 30 just to say hurry up, you're sort of over time. So with that, if anyone has any questions about the rules of the motion. Yes, ma'am?
Not rules of the motion, but do you mind?
Yes, sorry, I meant to say if you have any questions or concerns about the motion tonight, by all means direct them towards the president of the LGBT Society, which is over here.
Yes. Hi, my name's Pauline. As Ben has said, I'm president of LGBT. Myself and committee member Sam over there, say hi. Yeah, we will be hanging after the debate outside. If anyone wants to voice any concerns, debate or otherwise, feel free to talk to us. Cool.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we'll start with the debate. And the first speaker for the proposition is Miss Rachel Arnold. Well, welcome her to the floor.
Okay.
On Pauline and Sam's point, and I'm speaking for the proposition on transgender issues while not being transgender myself. If at any point I mince my words or use any incorrect language that you find offensive or anything, please just kind of give me a nudge or a wave or point of information and I will retract anything that needs to be retracted. But yeah, on that point, I am not going to completely ignore what Ben said, but I am going to talk a little bit about definitions of transgender, mental disorder, and gender and identity, just a little bit, nothing too personal. So one of the main things that I wanted to get from tonight was to make sure that my language is as clear as possible. So I looked up some definitions, as I often do as an English student. So the first one I looked up was gender, which according to Farleck's Medical Partner Dictionary is a category to which one is assigned by the self or others, which is where identity comes in. Gender is something that, it's a category that we use because it's easier to have these little sections and boxes. Labels are very helpful. I am not against labels. It's easier to have a name for yourself and for other people like you or different from you. That's just how labeling works. Transgender comes from, and you're all about, sorry to anyone who did Latin at school, trans comes from the Latin, it's a prefix for across. So transgender, across gender, from the American Heritage Medical Dictionary is identifying as or having undergone medical treatment to become a member of the opposite sex. In my mind, this does not imply that biological medical treatment is necessary. It is an identity, and it is identifying with the same characteristics as a member of the opposite sex. Mental illness or mental disorder, as it was, again, according to Farleck's Partner Medical Dictionary, is a broadly inclusive term generally denoting one or more of the following. A disease of the brain with behavioural symptoms such as paresis or acute alcoholism, or a disease of the mind, and this is where I'm going to draw my first distinction, a disease of the mind or personality such as schizophrenia. Although they are synonyms, the brain and the mind can be seen as two different things. The brain is purely neurological. It is the neurons that are firing messages from your brain to the rest of your body, whereas the mind is typically more philosophical and social and personality related. So there's a lot of there is already,
Yeah, I'd like to say that it is a tenet of psychology that everything psychological is biological, so there absolutely is a very close link to that. Just want to make that.
Yes, no, absolutely. There's a very close link, but I think it's important to denote them as separate things, particularly when we're talking about societal issues as well. Despite how closely linked in the crossover that there is, I don't think it's fair to suggest that they are the same thing when, these are often societal issues as well, and I think it's important to denote societal distinctions. So with them being separate yet related things, transgender is an identity that is decided by the individual, sorry, losing the place. Yes, it's decided by the individual, and mental illness is not. I don't think, my main argument that it is harmful and unfair to link these two categories. And the Journal for Quality of Life Research by Emily Newfield, Stacey Hart, Suzanne Dibble and Laurie Kohler states, "We do not believe FTM, female to male transgender, to be indicative of a psychopathology or disease state." So I think the research is there to back up my point that they are separate things. And to compare the very real experience of someone's identity across gender, which is such a broad and fluid spectrum, to mental illness harms everybody involved in the conversation. It tells the trans individual that what they are experiencing is something to be changed and corrected, instead of celebrated as a form of expression, which it is. It further stigmatizes everybody involved in the conversation because it wrongly categorizes everyone that is involved as other and different, and as a problem to be solved rather than worked with. It suggests that they must be worked against in a way. It further promotes cultural narratives of binary genders, where there is one or the other, instead of recognizing fluidity and the change that we all kind of go through in varying degrees for our lives. And I think that it is important that these two categories, similar though they are kept separate, and that they are respected for what they are in their own right. I think we must better equip ourselves when talking about both of these terms. As you can hear, I'm getting faster and short of breath and losing confidence because I don't feel confident talking about these issues, because in a certain place, not being a trans speaker, I don't feel that this is essentially my place to be a main speaker. So as I was saying earlier, that this is one way for me to learn more about these issues and to learn more about the differences and nuances that there are involved in everything. I think it is important to ask respectful questions of those who you may know who have psychological disorders or may be trans. Respectful being the main word. It is important that we do our research and we listen to those who need our help and act according to what they are experiencing. Can I ask how much time I have?
You have precisely 1 minute.
Yeah, that's it. If there are... Oh, I can't take questions now.
Literally just a...
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and we now welcome to the floor the first speaker for the opposition, Mr. Lang.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I find you well. I'm a bit scruffy today because I'm just back from work, so I haven't had a lot of time to prepare, so I'm not as formally attired as I probably should be for this. So, moving aside, to tackle the argument, it was pretty much what I expected from the proposition. It was taking a very sort of societal look at the emotion, at the term of disorder, and all the rest of it. There were some good arguments made there, and some I actually agree with. The point is, though, is that a lot of it was irrelevant, and I'm going to explain why. This is not a matter of society, whether something's natural or unnatural, whether it's moral or immoral. There's nothing to do with that. This is an issue of declassifying a psychological disorder. This is a debate that is clinical. This is a medical debate, in the meaning and definition of the disorder in itself. Okay? So, what is a disorder? Well, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of it, if you don't mind, because it's quite long-winded. But it's a significant clinical disturbance in an individual's cognition, emotional regulation, or behaviour that reflects a dysfunction in psychological, biological, or developmental processes underlying mental functioning. And that is the key word right there, functioning, your ability to function. That's the important aspect here. Now, is transgenderism, should it be classified as a mental disorder? Well, it can't, because it's not. Transgenderism, not to upend the whole debate here, but transgenderism is not a diagnostic disorder for a psychological disorder. It's not. It may have been maybe in the DSM-3 for TR, but in the current iteration of DSM-5, no, it's not. In fact, it stipulates that non-conformist gender, or gender non-conformity, is not a disorder. What is, however, is gender dysphoria, right? And that's a very specific thing. Dysphoria, of course, being distress. So this is distress at the confliction or incongruity of the physical sex and gender and the perceived sex or gender. It's that incongruity and the distress that you get from that constitutes this disorder. Okay, and I think that's a serious issue, and I think that's very profound, actually, and shouldn't be written off. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was just to kind of back up that. Do you not think that issues of gender are primarily societal rather than clinical?
I'm actually going to develop my point a bit more, so maybe that would actually help you out there. So, in terms of meeting the criteria for that disorder, okay, you have already demonstrated that this is getting in the way of your ability to function, right? It's quite emotive in the sense that, you know, it's a terrible thing not to love yourself and not to, you know, be comfortable in your own skin and to feel like you're foreign in your own body, and it is a serious thing. But I think, honestly, you're being very short-sighted and you're being very reckless in trying to say, well, no, we should declassify it as a disorder, because it's that diagnostic tool that acts as a framework for how we actually approach and support people who are transgender, who are having these difficulties and this disorder. If we were to suddenly say, okay, well, it's perfectly normal, it is to drastically undermine the difficulties that they face, which aren't normal. And if I can, actually, if I can frame this in a different way, let's look at another disorder, right? So, autism spectrum disorder, right? When you get diagnosed with this disorder, it's not saying that you are less, that you're weak, that you are wrong, that you are something that's, you know, invalid. That's not the point. It's saying that you have, or you in your current condition, you will face difficulties, and you are having difficulties. And it's about approaching these difficulties, giving you the appropriate support, so that you can reach a conclusion that you find satisfactory, right? So a satisfactory conclusion in the sense of whether that would be a reconciliation with your physical gender, or all the way over to transition surgery, gender reassignment, or anywhere in between. That's what this is about. That's what this diagnostic tool is about. It's providing a framework for care. And if you destroy that, if you get rid of that, declassify that, what do you replace it with? You know what I mean? If you don't have the medical basis to back that up, if you don't have that diagnostic tool there, it will not be funded. Those vital services will not be funded. And transgender people will not have those services, they'll not have that guidance, they'll not have that support that gets them to look at these issues that they may be having, or this distress they're having with their condition, and come to a real positive resolution. And it is really important work. And I was talking to a colleague of mine, Una Doherty. She's a member of victim support. We deal with all sorts of things. PNSMI girls come in, victims of assault and abuse and robbery, burglary, all sorts of horrible things. But she deals very closely with the LGBT community. And I actually talked this motion through with her. And she said, yeah, it would be very damaging to our services if that were to be classified, because that is our justification. That is what we use. We go, okay, this is the medical definition, diagnostic tool that this person has met the framework criteria for, in which case then we can now give them the appropriate support.
On that point?
Yes.
There's no requirement for medical diagnosis for any legal process in the UK apart from legal recognition, and the police service in Northern Ireland do not use that as a basis for support.
No, the police service don't. No. We have to consider that though when we're going to a person who is transgender or whatever else. But generally speaking, I was just talking about her experience in the field when she's dealt with people and discussing that with them. I'm talking about more going through, okay, you're having serious issues and difficulties, you're transgender, and this is causing a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. I don't feel comfortable in my own skin, and it's getting them through a diagnostic procedure and process and then coming to that conclusion. Getting them to that satisfactory conclusion. So, yeah, honestly, when I look at this, I see good intentions, I really do. But I think it is recklessness and short-sightedness obfuscated by good intentions. I think we need to view this as the useful tool and framework that it is. And on that note, I will end my speech. Thank you very much.
Mr. Neil, and the House I welcome before a meeting speaker who literally volunteered at the very last of last minute, Mr. Phelan Hook, the last speaker for the proposition.
Well, I'm actually going to be looking at the proposition from more of a biological perspective, looking into trials that have been done with transgender people, and obviously including non-binary as well. There was a very famous case that was done not too long ago, about 2004, that was run from 1965 onward. It was about David Reimer. Yeah, if you've actually heard of him. It was a boy that was actually botched circumcision, which had caused castration, though they had no idea what to do, so they continued to raise David as a girl. Though David had always identified as male, even though he was told he was female. So which brings me to the next point, that FTM and MTF transgender people, in both cases, that typical brain patterns of their preferred gender is actually present within the brain, though these can be quite far-fetched between people, especially those of the gender non-binary, though it also links in with female to males, also often, what's the word I'm looking for, experiencing phantom limb syndrome with, different body parts that aren't there, which can be experienced in male to female as well, which all links in with the brain. What the brain thinks, the brain will do. But we cannot confuse neurological with psychological, even though them two are quite closely intertwined with each other, though mental health issues are explained as the diseased mind, expanding on from Rachel's point. And obviously,
On that point. When it comes to mental disorders, it's not like mental illness. There's a distinction to be made here with personality, psychological disorders. It's not something to necessarily be cured. It's not something necessarily that is a bad thing. That's the point I hope I got across in saying that it's not a judgment. What it is about is saying that yes, you have a series of difficulties that you're having right now. This is the diagnosis for it, and going through and trying to find a solution using the diagnostic tool available.
Which can make some transgender people feel trapped. That it's a specific diagnosis. It's currently called gender identity disorder. It's making them feel that there is something wrong with them when there's nothing wrong with them. But being transgender in general, there's nothing wrong. But gender dysphoria is the discomfort of being in a body you obviously don't feel comfortable in. Obviously, when you identify as what you do neurologically, in your mind. Which also brings me along to, as well as hormones and binding genes. It also goes near enough genes. Both MTF and FTM have variation of the binding genes, and more commonly found in FTM, they are lacking female-only distribution patterns.
I believe we're in absolute agreement. In fact, there is evidence that the hormones that you're actually experiencing in the womb can actually affect. There is evidence to show that.
There's evidence also in.
But my issue.
You finish off the point.
My issue with this is that it doesn't seem to justify getting rid of the psychological disorder diagnosis.
Absolutely, since it is set in stone that if you take away such support networks, nothing's going to really come out of it. But it's making that person feel that they are worth the time, which some really don't feel like it when they're labelled with a mental health condition or disorder. It makes them feel that they're sick, if you get what I'm kind of. That's really all I have.
No, it's no problem. Yeah, finish up then?
Yep, finish up there. Is there any questions?
If there is any questions you want to take, by all means.
Well, I mean, a lot of what you said there is the reality of it. It is the reality of transgenderism, but the diagnostic is what we use to deal with that, and it's what we use to justify the funding for the services that those people use. These are very passionate people. These aren't people who are cold, calculating, sort of purely analytical psychologists. They are people who engage with the individual and work with the individual to find, a solution that is satisfactory.
Absolutely, I don't disagree with you there. Though some people do feel like they're being pigeonholed for who they are. Yep.
How would you ensure the same level of care and support is given as cis women?
Pardon?
How would you ensure that the same level of care and support that is available at the moment, because it's classified in this way, is given if it's not?
Generally speaking, you do make a really good point there, but at the same time, giving someone a label can make them feel like there is a way out of it. Though there is no specific cure for gender dysphoria, apart from, cross-hormone treatment, social transition. It's helping the person transition socially by helping them integrate in society as their preferred gender, per se. So that's really all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Speech from Mr. Fionn Hook, and now we move on to the last speaker of the evening, and then we'll have summary speeches from both sides. Moving on to the last speaker of the evening, Mr. Johnny Fidler.
I can make it to the lectern. I consider my job to be done. Hope you don't mind. Well, thank you all for that stimulating and respectful debate. I would like to reiterate first Rob's concerns about being a cis person talking about this motion. But to be perfectly honest, in the past I've been a man talking on a panel with other men about women's issues, and I keep meaning every every week to bring up in private members' business a motion that the society needs to see more women speakers on panels on a more regular basis, and I keep forgetting. So I've remembered it there, and I'll use my opportunity to plug it there, and also because I don't, by any means, have enough material to fill up 7 minutes. So I'm really fishing around. Ryan has set out why we believe gender dysphoria is clinically to be considered a disorder and why we should not declassify it. I will argue further that classifying it as such is no bad thing, because we have heard some things from previous speakers which sounded okay, but their implications are actually a little bit troubling. First prop, Rachel said, I believe at some point she was making a distinction between the brain and the mind, and she said that gender identity is decided by the individual. Now, second prop said, effectively implied pretty heavily, that one's preferred gender identity is actually inherent in the brain, and that even if you are raised one way or another, then but you will always have an innate identity. So I think there's something to be clarified there. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just a clarification. Okay, that was me mincing my words. I don't think I explained. I don't think I used identity in the right word there. So if it can be changed to expression of an identity, that would clarify my point. But I know that obviously at the time I hadn't said that, and it wasn't.
No, sure. I don't want to be pulling you up on technicalities, but I do think this question about identity versus feeling, this question of who you feel like you want to be versus how you feel about who you are, is a distinction that does need to be made, or at least how you feel about what everyone perceives you as being. You also said that to classify someone as, to classify gender dysphoria as a psychological disorder would be suggesting to them that they have to be changed. And the second prop also made some comments along the lines of, I've lost the actual comments, but along the lines of, basically it would be a slap in the face to transgender people to say that gender dysphoria is a psychological disorder. That would be in some way belittling them. That would be in some way telling them that they are wrong, that they should not be the way they are. And what I want to ask about that is, what does that say about our attitude towards psychological disorders? That if you're experiencing a psychological disorder, then that means everyone will, and will rightly, regard you as being disordered, as being something that needs to be fixed. No. We are not saying that we want gender dysphoria to continue to be classified as a psychological disorder, and also we want to stigmatise psychological disorders and belittle people because of it. And ask yourself why you think it would be offensive, why you think it would be a bad thing, why you think it would be telling them, and this was the word you used, second prop, that they are not worth the time. Are we telling people who have psychological disorders that they're not worth the time? Is that the assumption we are proceeding under? Think about the message that will send to people who do suffer psychological disorders. Other psychological disorders, other than gender dysphoria. Think about the message that will send from this house tonight, if that is the way you vote. No, we don't recognise this as a disorder. It is not worthy of psychological attention. It's just who you are, and you have to accommodate yourself to it. How progressive is that? To reduce the number of people who are considered to be deserving of and in need of psychological help. Now, it's obviously I can stand up here and say it's not very progressive to reduce the number of people classified as having a psychological disorder. And you can come back and say, well, we used to think that homosexuality was a mental illness. We used to think that having a non-cisgender identity was a mental illness. So it's no bad thing to further circumscribe the bounds. But no, it isn't like saying that. It's not like saying that because we are not talking about something that is a matter entirely for yourself, which is your sexual orientation or your gender identity, whether it's innate, whether you're born with it, or whether it's a thing that's environmental and you decide as you mature and find yourself. That's immaterial to this debate. The point is, it's a matter for you. If you're comfortable with it, if you're comfortable being a man who's attracted to men and has relationships with men, if you're comfortable being a male who feels like a woman and wants to identify as a woman, that is fine. That's entirely for you. We are talking about people who experience gender dysphoria, the people who feel distress, the people who feel that there is something wrong with them. And you want to take the opportunity for confidential, professional psychological support away from them? As Ryan said, that would be an example of gross recklessness. You would not be scoring a victory for the trans movement. You would be setting it back by denying psychological, clinical support to its most vulnerable members. And if you reduce the number of people with psychological disorders, that will inevitably further marginalise it and further stigmatise it. I implore you to oppose the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Finlay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take 3 rounds of questions, 3 the proposition, 3 sort of abstaining on the motion if you want to get up and make a point generally on the motion, and then 3 the opposition. Each side will then have a 2-minute window in which to sort of make a summary speech as to just sort of summarise their case and explain to you why they believe they're deserving of your vote in as succinct a manner as possible. We'll then take a vote on the motion. So, without further ado, does anyone have a question for the proposition tonight? If I could ask you to stand up, state your name, and address it to whichever side. So, anyone for the proposition? Anyone at all? No? Yes, you said.
I'm wondering if there's a mistake in the title of the debate, because it's saying to declassify transgenderism, but you're saying it's not currently classified, so then there's a mistake in the title of the debate?
That's sort of an absent point. Apologies. Does anyone want to take that from either side? As to whether you agree with that thought?
I'd love to take it. I think you're right. Absolutely right. And I think it was definitely an overlook in the title, and I'll definitely give someone abuse about that. But generally speaking, I mean, it can't be denied. It's a fact. You know, it's not. In the DSM-5, as I've said, does stipulate quite clearly that gender non-conformity does not constitute a disorder. The distress at this non-conformity is the disorder, being the dysphoria, which means distress.
Yes, by all means.
Transgenderism in itself isn't a disorder, but what the distress that can come with being transgender, gender dysphoria, is the condition of what needs the attention, rather than transgender as a whole, and obviously the non-binaries as well, who may also experience gender dysphoria too.
Yes, I think there's a member of what the audience wants to respond to that.
Okay, following on from that point, you're making this argument saying that we need to have support on the basis of transgenderism being a psychological disorder, when actually the problem is the psychological distress. And the distress is partly caused by society calling them mad, or they've got a psychological issue. So maybe if we stop stigmatising and society starts to be more accepting, we could still provide the support. Yeah, that's it. I'm done.
Do you want to respond to that?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
She's hiding. Anyway.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, no, I mean, I hope I was clear on that. It's about the actual definition of what a disorder is. In fact, I can read it out verbatim, and this is actually Psychology Today. A syndrome characterized by clinically significant disturbance in an individual's cognition, emotion, regulation, or behavior that reflects a dysfunction in the psychological, biological, or developmental processes underlying mental function. Sounds like a lot of jargon, right? But Cliff Notes version. is more along the lines of function, right? So if it is caused distress to the point where the incongruity between your physical sex and your perceived sex causes self-loathing, which can lead to comorbid conditions such as depression and, most tragically, suicide or anything along those lines, then it is very much a disorder. That is the definition of a disorder, and gender dysphoria meets that definition because of those underlying factors.
So that suggests it's a clinical condition?
Mm-hmm.
So that suggests it can be treated?
It can be helped. Actually, are we allowed back and forth?
Not particularly, but I just thought it would help for you to clarify the point of it.
Okay. If I can get you to repeat,
For you.
can I get you to repeat that last portion, please, of what you said? It's about clinical can be treated, yeah?
Yeah, so if it's clinical, can it be treated? And does that suggest it should be treated?
Can, should, those are two different words. Saying something is curable or not is not the point of disorder, right? I mean, that's like saying you cure autism spectrum disorder because it's something that can be treated. No, that's not how it works at all. It is something that is part of you. It is something that is inherent. You don't just cure that. And it's very arrogant, or maybe you want to assume so. And of course, I'm not saying that's the case, but merely making the point. It's about giving that person the tools so that they can help accept themselves and to function better in wider society. And in terms of transgenderism, one of the worst things that can happen is, as I said in my speech, was just feeling like an alien in your own body. Generally, from what I've seen from sources and stuff from transgender people who've made these points, just not loving themselves. You know what I mean? And I think that's a really sad thing. I don't think they need a cure, but I think giving them tools to accept them, maybe even giving them support towards something that they find to be the best solution. So, for instance, if that's gender reassignment, or perhaps even just reconciling with their gender identity. Because I said this in my speech. I mean, I'm just repeating myself here, but yeah, that's the point. It's not about curing, it's not about fixing the person, it's about helping them solve the
Briefly,
problem.
Mr. Dean.
I've done that.
Would anyone like to address any questions to the opposition now?
Wait, what?
Quite a lot.
Is it right for to reply?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry, apologies. The opposition would like to reply.
Yeah, I think the wording of this whole thing has obviously been very, very difficult, and but I do think it's important to note that while I don't think anyone is in any way suggesting that the services that are in place are these kind of big, scary institutions that are determined to trample these things out and treat them in a very Victorian manner. I think it is a little misguided and idealistic to completely disassociate trans issues from societal issues because the two are so closely linked. I think it's a very good view, but it's a very idealistic view to suggest that the stereotypes are and the prejudices are not there.
Right, thank you for that. And any questions to the opposition? Right, I'll try and take some of you. Yourself?
So like, whenever you're declassifying gender dysphoria as no longer as a psychological thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to give any support at all to people who are transgender and are feeling confused, because there are associations out there like Rainbow Project and Gender Jam, which are very much setting up like an informal environment for people who are transgender or non-binary or intersex. And it's really just an informal setting. Will obviously give them the opportunity to befriend and meet other people like them, so that they know that they're not alone in these situations and that what they're feeling is completely normal. But at the end, and they won't have to face the ideas that there is something wrong with them, like they would if it was if they thought if it was a disorder, or because it just reinforces that it is more so the social the social side of things that make them feel the like the mental illness part of things. So yeah, they can get support more in a more informal environment, I feel, is more suitable.
Sam.
You probably have to say.
Okay.
Hey, Sal. Okay, you're absolutely right in terms of the informal support and stuff like that. That's happening. And those charities that you're talking about, yeah, I mean, they are charities that get funded, but for instance, like charities, Victim Support is a charity that works very closely with the public sector. In fact, it is the public sector, and you'll find a lot of these charities get government funding, and without that government funding, they will be absolutely gutted. And they will be nowhere near capable of providing those services. They're already under strain under the current Conservative government. They already are underfunded and relying very heavily on volunteers, specifically even in transgender issues. I think I'm trying to remember your first point. 'Cause it was quite a long question.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just.
I think I remember for you actually. It was about the availability of services, and yeah, that's what led on to the Victim Groups. Okay, well, I mean, that's in itself what I just answered there sort of disproves that point. But the crux here is the government funding, right? If there's no classification, if there's no medically backed clinical disorder, then it cannot apply for government funding. It can't be funded. It's as simple as that. There's no backing for it, and the government won't fund it. And if you think the Conservative government is all of a sudden going to go, oh, you know what? We'll give them money anyway. You know, if you expect that, you haven't been paying attention. But, no, they are, I'm sorry. But generally speaking, yeah, it would have devastating consequences for the trans community if those services were to be taken away. And they wouldn't be taken away without clinical diagnosis.
And with that, if the proposition would like to respond, anyone has?
Just to respond with how sparse the services are already, even. Currently, there is only one specific regional clinic for people under 18 called Knowing Our Identity, or COI, and the over 18 clinic, which offer surgery and cross hormones. I'm not sure if COI do, but I'll look more into that. From experience dealing with COI, it's a very valuable service. A lot of people have taken advantage of it in the past, which have led them to. They're very sparsely populated at the minute. They're very understaffed, which is very unfortunate, as well as the Brackenburn Clinic. The waiting lists are extremely long, and as your point said, the loss, if they were to go, it would be devastating for the transgender community in general.
Thank you for that. And if anyone has any sort of neutral points, abstaining points on the motion, yourself.
It's very criticism neutral, yeah. Just taking takes of both sides.
Yeah, it's so good.
My name is Ellen Murray. I work in the community voluntary sector supporting trans people. I thought that both sides were quite lacking in terms of the detail and actually quite a lot of the facts. I thought it was very hopeful but quite naive to suggest that the trans sector gets any government funding. The government funding is, in terms of community voluntary sector, is reliant on statute and anti-discrimination law as opposed to diagnosis, which already exists in UK and Irish law. Healthcare service funding in Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK is not necessarily, in all cases, based on diagnosis, and certainly in the gender identity service framework, it's not based. Both sides quoted the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which would be great if we were in America, but we're not. We use the ICD here, and we use transsexualism, which is in gender identity disorder of adolescence and childhood. I suppose both sides I thought were quite weak because there are such good arguments against declassification on access to specific care within insurance systems and within accommodations to work and everything, which have, those are really good arguments. On the proposition side, I think you could have argued some really strong ideas about clinical thresholds, because the people I support, loads of them can't get any care because of the diagnosis, and because of that, because they can't meet the threshold for that. So just, I suppose, I thought both sides were quite weak to it.
Does anybody from inside like to respond?
I mean, I think not being responsible one, but yeah, I think you kind of flipped us a wee bit there. We're saying that the clinical diagnosis should stay, and the other one's saying it should go. Because you were kind of talking about the threshold for diagnosis. I think that would have been a point more aimed at us. I think.
No.
But okay, fair enough. I mean, misunderstood. That's fine. But I thank you for your information. I take your points.
But this is not a response to the point, just something that hearing Ellen speak put me in mind of. If the Literafic has an LGBT plus debate again, and members of the LGBT sub want to come along, please do speak, because you know so much more than a lot of us do. So, thank you.
Proposition, like to respond?
Yeah, just
Yeah, any response?
just similar, suppose. Thank you. Yeah, I think the very good points made. This was not researched as well by me as it could have been, definitely. But yeah, I definitely think it would be a really interesting discussion if there are any points. There is time afterwards for. No, there's not. I have completely forgotten.
We can do it at a pub.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But yeah, and then the LGBT Society are here afterwards. I think it would be a bit remiss of all of us if we didn't benefit from the knowledge that's here with us this evening.
Here. Would you like to respond as well, sir?
Well, I was kind of last minute and I was just trying to scramble together anything I could, and I totally forgot about the clinical stuff. Absolutely, totally forgot.
Don't apologise.
I can still end the summary, it's okay.
Fair enough. Proposition, any more points in the proposition? We'll take one last round of questions to each side, and then I think we'll allow the teams to make their summary speeches. Any points in the proposition? Or have we covered pretty much everything? Opposition then? Yourself?
Hi, Emma. Just a point, you talked about homosexuality as one of your points, just that it's no longer considered to be a mental disorder, and just that they would feel discomfort in themselves as well. So it's a similar sort of distress from the two communities, sort of, that they feel, uncomfortable. Maybe they're scared, perhaps, of what people are going to say, and that's that's what really causes a distress or discomfort. And if it's not, homosexuality isn't classified as a mental disorder, why should transgenderism or gender dysphoria be classified as a mental disorder, where if you took it away they could still go to, for anxiety, or go to speak to people just about general distress, that there's no need for the actual label to be there.
If you have something.
Okay, well, there are certainly a lot of overlaps, as with anything that's not neurotypical or not the norm. There certainly are a lot of overlaps in terms of identity and stuff like that there, but there is a significant difference between someone who's homosexual and someone who's transsexual. In the fact of the matter is, I'm sure you don't choose who you're attracted to, but sex is a choice. Living in your own body isn't a choice. You know what I mean? And that's a significant difference. And also, they have different needs. Gender reassignment surgery is never something that's, to my experience at least, or what I know of, to my knowledge, an option for homosexuality as it is with transsexuals, and that is an entirely different sort of needs basis. You know what I mean?
Right. Anyone from the proposition?
Yeah, I think that's fair to, one, acknowledge the crossover, but also acknowledge the differences that they face. Yeah.
Absolutely. And at this point we'll move on to the summary speeches. If the proposition would like to summarise their case first of all. You wouldn't mind, sorry.
No, that's okay. Just that you're hearing from me again. Sorry. But I've been taking a few notes. So I think, and again, jump in if I've kind of missed anything or have placed anything in. I think our argument was very much that things cannot always be separate. The things that transgenderism and the issues that come with that are so often so closely tied with social issues, even though they may come from a biological starting point. They have societal repercussions, and it is it can be seen as idealistic to ignore those repercussions. I think our main argument came from lived experience, with the difficulties that come up with these issues, and the argument was I have a look notes, sorry. Yes, that that the differences are important to recognise and they are important to deal with as separate issues, and that we can certainly deal with the repercussions in one way, and we can deal with the identity issues in another way. They don't always have to be taken hand in hand, because they do need different systems of care, and thankfully the biological and neurological systems of care are there, and I think we both fully appreciate that, but it cannot be entirely disassociated from the societal repercussions, so I think it's important to consider both of those together. That's it.
Thank you very much, and I welcome the opposition to come up and summarise their case.
Again, thank you all very much for an enlightening, more than anything, debate. Used my, because I'm not going to take up the 2 minutes again, should have mentioned earlier, we need more trans speakers too. We just need more, non-majority speakers in general. The opposition has set out our arguments, I think, quite clearly. We've set out the clinical definition of disorder. We've interpreted the premise of this slightly contentious motion to mean that element of one possible transgender life experience that can be a disorder, a psychological disorder, and is currently classified as such. We have explained why it is better for people with gender dysphoria to have this framework, to have this safety net in place of that clinical definition. And we have asked you to consider the ramifications of your decision tonight, because ultimately, in a debating chamber on which the House votes, it's you that I really need to speak to, and it's you who will speak when you decide on this motion. What it says to the other community at stake in this motion, people with psychological disorders. And we've pointed out some of the inadvertent, but nonetheless powerful, prejudicial assumptions about psychological disorders inherent in some proposition arguments. We've set out why the current classification is a good thing, the services and support networks need it, and we set out why it isn't a bad thing. Having a psychological disorder is no shame. The opposition rests.
And with that, we now move to the formal vote. We're going to have 2 votes. The first vote is a vote on your prior opinion. So your vote will reflect what your opinion was before you heard the speakers make their cases tonight. So if you were in favour of the motion of declassifying before you hear the speeches tonight, if you could please raise your hand for us to count. And if you were opposed to the motion, if you could raise your hand, please. 1. Yeah. And if you had no opinion on the motion at all, and sort of sitting on the fence before you came into the room, please raise your hand and say meh.
Yeah.
Calvin's over there.
Correct.
15?
I counted someone twice. Right, and now to the second vote, which is, you can put your hand down now. Now on to the second vote, which is based on speakerability. So, sorry, just trying to work out the rules in my head there for a second. So, if you thought the proposition spoke best tonight, we'll take the proposition first and the opposition, and then if you thought they both spoke equally well, you can raise your hand at that point. So, if you thought the proposition spoke best tonight, please raise your hand now. Vote for yourself.
Vote for yourself.
I was going to take some kind of moral high ground, but no, I am just that petty.
And if you thought the opposition spoke best,
I still think they're wrong.
I realize I'm making some really confused faces if people agree with it.
I got 31.
I got 30. Right, and if you thought that both teams spoke equally well, if you want to resume. Oh, I got 7. Do you want to count that again? Sorry.
3 is 2.
I'm nice and high.
Disparity.
T- 11.
I got 10. That's what I got.
10. You're converging. That's going well.
Right, and then on that basis. So on the prior vote, the ayes have it. On speaker ability, meh was definitely the. Oh wait, no, what am I saying? The opposition. So the opposition won the speaker ability. The prior opinion was proposition. So, well done. I'd just like to take the opportunity to congratulate all 4 speakers tonight, because I realise that the House did not make the job easy for you in any way. So you grappled with that many-headed hydra very well, and congratulations. So. That's pretty much it from us this week. Yes, madam.
Hi, can I just make a quick announcement? If anyone is interested in the American election, on Monday, the Politics Society is holding a
Resign! Get down!
That's all. Don't talk to me.
Talk to her.
Very nice. I'll bring pop.
I mean, unless we're going around a witch burning, that's it from us tonight. Yes, so, the rule is technically that we don't allow other societies to have polemics of, promoting themselves at their events other than within this house and in conjunction with this house. So,
No.
So, that is us for tonight. If you'd like to join us in the House Bar on Strandwells Road, where we can continue the debates, by all means. The LGBT Society are also here if you'd like to talk to them about tonight's debate, by all means. Thank you very much to all of you for attending.
What did you think that said?
I don't know, leave me alone.